You're listening to Stealing from Wizards, Volume 4, Arson, by R.A. Consul. Chapter 4, Hounds and Strays. The letter continued. We've been doing an inventory of stuff in the vault, and there's a book missing. I have remember Roche taking it. Arthur said you might know something. Apparently, it's the only copy in the world, so if you do know anything, that would be great. P.S. It's supposed to be a royal secret, so don't tell anyone and maybe burn this letter. He did know something. He had stolen it. In his defense, Kuro had stolen it from Claudius Roche, who had first stolen it from the vault beneath the Summer Palace when he was pretending to be regent of Tirnanog. He would also gladly return it to its rightful owner, except that he couldn't. It had been destroyed. After breaking out of prison and into a palace, stealing a national treasure was icing on his cake of crimes. He had wrestled with what to do with it. On one hand, it was clearly precious, as it had been kept in a vault. On the other, Roche had gone to a lot of effort to steal it, so preventing him from ever getting it again seemed important. After Kuro fled to the Blandlands to hide, the odds of his being able to return the book to where it belonged were slim. So he thought it better that it did not exist at all. He shredded it and tossed it in a dumpster along with leftover French fries and half-eaten eggs. It wasn't as though the world would be losing much. It was very dull. He knew that because he'd read it. Twice. There wasn't much entertainment where he'd been living. The book was supposed to be about training dragons as mounts, though it spent most of its pages on diet and medical concerns. The parts that did discuss dragon taming broadly convinced him never to try. He also doubted whether any of it were true. Dragons were incredibly rare, and based on the single dragon he'd met, he wasn't certain the author had ever encountered one. The dragons described were savage, animalistic, and had more of a taste for caribou than cookies. He didn't really want to tell Marie that he'd torn up a precious, one-of-a-kind book and tossed the pages in the pungent ooze scraped from the grease trap along with leftover eggs and half-eaten sausages from the diner he'd been working at. He also didn't want to lie. Fortunately, it was easier to gild the truth in a letter than in person. He explained that it had been thoroughly destroyed and she wouldn't have to worry about Claudius Roche ever getting his hands on it. That seemed sort of honorable. Her response asked if he'd read it first. A series of letters exchanged with Marie over the next several days extracted the truth and ended with Kuro agreeing to reproduce what he remembered of the book. On the training of high dragons for the backing of a dragoon by... Stumped on the title page. He couldn't remember the author. This wasn't going to go well. The following days did not see a marked improvement. Perhaps if he had broad swaths of free time to reflect and ponder, he could have remembered more clearly. But summer school and cooking duties continued, despite having been given a quest by a queen. He quickly longed for the early days of summer, when he had far less to worry about, and the impending start of school seemed eons away. Finishing up a painful afternoon of remedial Elvish, he was confronted with a brutal reminder of just how little time there was before school started. There were teachers on the grounds. They were streaming over the edge of the plateau on myriad flying devices, heading to the ivy-covered teachers' residence. Many flew on magic carpets. Practical and economic choices, especially as they hauled their luggage along with them. The more fashionable ones rode side-saddle on elegant brooms. Professeur de rigueur lounged in an ornate palanquin, hauled by a pair of giant mechanical hummingbirds, the downdraft of which sent dust and petals flying everywhere. Kuro joined Merle at the doors of the high school and shared in his dissatisfaction with the invaders. "Not long now," the custodian grumbled. The pair sighed together, grieving the coming loss of peace and cleanliness. It wasn't just teachers either. As Kuro drifted down off the butte, he could see a swarm of people wandering away from the ferry dock, on foot, towards each of the residences. Strays. The non-wizard staff who actually kept the residences running. They cooked, cleaned, did laundry, and anything else wizards wouldn't. It felt rude to soar over the heads of people who were constrained by gravity, so he landed by the junior high just at the base of the butte and ran home instead. The stray staff were an odd lot, sort of by necessity. Not many would sign up to spend most of their year trapped on an island looking after ungrateful wizard kids. Their charges generally failed to recognize the effort required to keep them clean and fed. It was broadly believed that everything on the island was done by magic, a common assumption among wizards. To be sure, magic was at play. The refrigerators were enchanted to stay cold, the laundry machines ran themselves, and the mop buckets kept their water clean and hot. But the socks strewn about on bedroom floors did not collect themselves, dinners could not remember diners' preferences or allergies, and a mop, no matter how magical, could not comfort a homesick student. Cooking for the hundreds of children was specifically time-consuming. Accelerating the process via magic was a risky endeavor. Just trying to turn uncooked dough into finished bread was an incredibly complicated process that would require an expert wizard with perfect focus. An errant thought could turn a perfectly good meal into a toxic soup. It was easier to turn coal into diamonds than flour into cookies. Substantially easier, actually. That was a second-year evocations assignment. Thus, a fleet of strays were employed at 3 of the residences. Kuro had met very few of them, though. The Luton did that work at Autumn Lodge for reasons they refused to elaborate on. Unlike the stray staff, the Luton made their presence known as loudly and often as possible. They delighted in making nuisances of themselves by dusting desks students were studying at, sweeping floors they were trying to stand on, and dealing dinners like playing cards. "Hey Kuro, what's the hurry?" He responded to the unexpected call in the way he did most surprises, by leaping to safety and preparing to flee once the danger had been identified. From the branches he dangled from, he saw a woman looking up at him. Her age was hard to nail down. Freckles and a boyish grin made her seem young, but her eyes had the look of someone who had already seen more than a lifetime. She was dedicatedly casual, wearing loose jeans and a t-shirt emblazoned with some Blandlands band name. A plaid shirt, shed in the summer quarter heat, was slung around her waist, and a large green duffel bag over her shoulder. Her dirty blonde hair was neatly cropped on one side and running wild on the other. Her new haircut, lack of servant's uniform, and his sense of panic meant he took a moment to recognize her. "Oh, hi Sam," he said to the one stray he knew well. He climbed down from the tree he'd launched himself into. "Welcome back." "Danny and Leith are moving in today," she said. "I'm going to help after I dump my stuff. Want to come?" Hidden in that invitation was a request for hard manual labor, but also a promise. His cat was back. Gray was taken along to wherever Danny spent her summers, where she was likely spoiled rotten. But the return of her keeper meant the return of the cat. "Absolutely. I'll make a pie. Do you like Spriteberry?" Their conversation was derailed by another greeting. "Hello again, Kuro Hayashi of Detritus," said an older woman, pale and white-haired. "Lovely to see you again," added a woman walking in her wake, dark-skinned and black-haired. "Do you know how much farther it is to the Summerhill residence?" asked a third, as if continuing the other's conversation. She was younger, red-haired, and red-faced in the heat. He recognized the trio from the Summer Palace. They were the royal sartorialists, those tasked with tailoring for the Tirnanog royalty. They must be on the island to ensure Marie's wardrobe would be suitably fine, though it was hard to imagine they'd be very busy given that students wore uniforms. "It's at the top of the hill," he said, pointing up the substantial slope. The 3 sighed in unified despair. "Aptly named," grumbled the eldest. "Y'all are new here, eh?" said Sam. "No worries. I'll show you where to unload. Let me get that for you." She grabbed the luggage of the white-haired woman and started marching uphill. "See you at Danny's," she shouted back over her shoulder to the now abandoned Kuro. Kuro would have joined them for the climb and offered to haul a bag as well, but he felt eyes on him. Not the casual glances of the other strays as they passed, but a steady stare. Being watched wasn't odd. He could feel every person on the road glancing at him, but the direction was all wrong. The gaze was coming from the forest and from below. There weren't many humans who had to look up to see Kuro. He casually surveyed the woods while concealing his purpose by stooping to retie a shoelace. He found those eyes, just visible through the lush underbrush of early summer. Amber, bright, thoughtful. Their owner blinked slowly and turned to scamper off through the woods, exposing itself in flickers of orange and white fur between leaves. A fox. It could, of course, just have been a member of the local wildlife. Avalon had no shortage of ordinary animals wandering its grounds. It was ill-advised, however, to ever assume any creature was merely what it appeared. They could be a wizard's familiar, an illusion, or a fairy creature that shared the form of an animal. Also, since his experience in the fairy court at Moot Point, Kuro had been particularly wary of foxes. Seeing a fox close to the Weavers made him more suspicious of both the fox and the three women. They had never done anything to earn his distrust. They were, by all appearances, skillful and friendly seamstresses. They were odd, no doubt, but masters of a craft tend to be. His suspicion of them was based mostly on a few coincidences and an uncanny similarity to the three foxes that had, somehow, defended him at trial. They shared a color scheme and a certain synchronicity in their movements. Seasoned with a sizable dose of Kuro's paranoia, that made the women, and any foxes he ever encountered, dangerous. He considered whether and how to warn Sam, then considered he might not need to. She'd been astray in a wizard's world long enough to approach the unknown with a wary eye and a gentle touch. He decided it best not to bother the women. Whether they were simply slightly odd strays or something else entirely, it was better to leave them to their business and trust Sam to take care of herself. Kuro maintained a measured pace at a safe distance. This allowed the adults space to converse and get to know each other without a bothersome student in their midst. It also reduced the chances of him annoying anyone who might be a terrifying being of untold power. After a slow amble to and past Summerhill, and a brief stop in late summer to pick sprite berries for the pie, Kuro reached the quiet solitude of his lodge, though upon entering, he was met with a harsh growl. "Hi, Kuro." The rafters, Kuro noted as he clung to them, could use a good dusting. They'd been neglected over the summer. He added it to his list of things to do before the other students arrived. "Sorry to startle you," lied Sir Talon Dubois, Knight Commander of the Canine Unit of the Royal Guard. He reclined on a sofa, taking up the best spot in the lounge, just the right distance from the central fireplace to feel its warmth without getting too hot. His long green uniform coat was slung over a nearby armchair. "Arthur said you wanted to see me." It wasn't a good choice of words. Kuro never wanted to see Dubois, nor did Dubois ever want to see Kuro. Their affairs, however, continued to be unavoidably entangled. "Marie said she already had one, so she told me I should give it to you," Kuro said. That was met with bemused silence. "Didn't they explain why I needed to see you?" Kuro asked. "They did not," replied Dubois. "Well, it's probably easier to just show you." He dropped down from the rafters, landing gently on a puff of air. "Come on." The hound retrieved his coat and ambled after the boy, down the hall to the residents' rooms. "I'm surprised you came without a reason," said Kuro. "You asking to see me is more than reason enough," he replied. "I can't imagine you inviting me for anything short of a national emergency." It's nothing like that. At least I don't think it is." They entered Kuro's room, and he pulled the offending object from beneath his mattress. "I've been trading letters with Marie, trying to decide what to do about it." Dubois blinked several times and began to rub his temples, as if the sight of it had caused immeasurable pain. "You have been keeping Excalibur under your mattress." "Yeah," said Kuro. "I wasn't going to carry it around with me. Weapons aren't allowed in school." The hound gestured to the long, rune-encrusted sword in Kuro's hands. "You have been keeping Excalibur under your dorm room mattress," he repeated, with both increased emphasis and exasperation. "I guess," said Kuro. But Marie wrote that they already have one in New Camelot, so this is just a fake, right? Crow retrieved the scabbard from beneath the mattress as well, and returned the sword to it. It wasn't safe to leave unsheathed. Most magical blades are enchanted to maintain a reasonable functional sharpness, recognizing that a blade that can slice as smoothly through a countertop as it could a carrot isn't actually all that useful. This one showed no such consideration for practicality. It had sliced off a leg of his bed and sank into the floor up to its hilt just because he'd once mislaid it on his mattress. He handed it over to the Hound, eager to have the thing out of his room. The Knight Captain produced a deeper growl than would be expected from a human. "It has a scabbard." "Should it not?" questioned Crow. "The blade is very sharp. It would be dangerous not to have it inside something." "Except that the real scabbard was lost centuries ago." Dubois trailed off as he examined the somewhat battered sheath. The velvet covering was old and worn, the metal fittings scuffed and dented, and settings for gemstones sat empty. "It's a fake," said Crow. "A copy, like the sword." "Probably," grumbled Dubois. "Hopefully. Do I even want to know where you got it?" "Claudius Roche sent it to me as a sort of graduation present," said Crow. "Here's the card." The list of profanities voicelessly expressed by the Hound could have rivaled Marie's, even at her surliest. He slid the sword into his satchel. Much like Crow's book bag, it appeared to have considerably more space within than it should. "As is tradition, seeing you has created a mountain of work for me." Crow walked the guardsman out of the lodge. "On the plus side, you haven't threatened me with jail even once." "I could if you like." Dubois gave a wolfish grin. "For old time's sake." "Save it," said Crow, waving his farewell to the Hound. "There's still enough time before school starts for me to do some crimes." Thank you for listening to Stealing from Wizards. If you liked our show, please consider rating or reviewing on iTunes. If you want to support this podcast or just can't wait for the next chapter, the full book is available on Amazon, Kobo, and Indigo. Our theme music was written by Camille Saint-Saëns, transcribed by Franz Liszt, performed by Rebecca Verdun, and used with permission. This episode was produced by Jim Tigwell.